tell you guys that I love Pokemon? Actually, you know what? I think I might already have. I actually just had a bit of a flashback of when I reviewed the first Pokemon movie. You know, the one that is actually based on the anime, starring Mewtwo and all that kind of stuff. Now, in case you guys might have forgotten that, or in case you don't know about my lifelong devotion to Pokemon, here's a little recap. I remember back when I was a kid, I was a major Pokemon fan. Well, technically I still am now since I'm still playing the games, but between the late 1990s up to the mid-2000s, I was obsessed with anything Pokemon. I collected the original 151 cards, I collected the little figurines, my Game Boys would 80% of the time have a Pokemon game on its system, I would check out the movies whenever they're in theaters, and I would always catch the anime whenever it was on TV. Yeah, as you could tell from that and, well, what's all around me, I could actually be much more than just an animation guy. But still the same geek as before. Anyways, with that said, I think it is safe to say that I am actually really excited for Detective Pikachu. Okay, I wasn't always anticipated for it. I would be lying if I said that I never had any doubts about it. I mean, we're talking about a live-action Pokemon movie from a major Hollywood studio. Considering their history with films based on video games, the word infamous would be the best way to describe it. In fact, when it was first announced, some would expect something like...
meow?
That, and the fact that it's not actually based on any of the main role-playing games or even the anime starring Ash and the gang, but rather one of the spin-off games that features a talking Pikachu solving mysteries. I mean, with all the characters we grew up with and the type of stories they usually deliver, this is the one worth making a major motion picture out of? But then suddenly, the first trailer came out, and it changed everything.
Welcome to Rhyme City, a celebration of the harmony between humans and Pokemon.
Surprisingly enough, it actually looks really promising. From what I could tell, the Pokemon look good, the acting seems like it could hold some weight, and has a story I'd like to know more of what's going on. Regardless of how the movie itself is, I could say that it really is an effective trailer, and since then, it got me hooked to want to check this out. Already, it seems like this movie is actually in the right step to do what most, if not all, big budgeted movies based on video games fail to do. Actually be good. Not just for the fans, but for non-fans as well to come in and actually really appreciate what it's trying to do, like to stand well on its own as its own movie. But now that this film is out of its Pokeball, is that actually the case? Well, we might as well try to be like a little Pikachu right over here, and we gotta be detectives ourselves to go and find out. And the clues seem to point to that if you guys are there to go and check out some live-action Pokemon, you are gonna get some live-action Pokemon. Might as well start off with the best aspect of the feature. Say what you will about the movie, but the visual effects here are amazing, and it's all thanks to the Pokemon. In a way, the film managed to do the impossible by taking these cartoon-like creatures and adapt them in a live-action environment with realistic textures and movements, yet still retaining their original design from the games and the anime. The result gives its audience the Pokemon they all know and love, but in a way that feels completely believable. This also plays a big part in making its environment feel immersive as well, where it feels like the original games coming to life and present the relationship between humans and Pokemon. Some regions view them like wild animals where there is a distinct separation between the people and the creatures, while others like Rhyme City treats everyone like equals and Pokemon can help out on specific jobs and act more like the trainer's buddy.
Look, you can talk to humans, I can talk to Pokemon. And if you want to find your pops, we're gonna need each other.
No, I don't need a Pokemon.
What about a world-class detective?
As for the individual Pokemon themselves, they actually play a big role in making the movie enjoyable to watch. As a Pokemon fan, I do appreciate that while the first generation of Pokemon are more featured here, They do include a whole bunch from the later generations as well in order to diversify the environment and also finding and recognizing them to feel rewarding. In a way, it's a lot like Who Framed Roger Rabbit or Ready Player One, where part of the fun is to look out for all the different cameos and appearances, as well as numerous of references to the games and the anime. For Pokemon fans, it does have some rewatchability value for the large amount of Easter eggs, and there's always a good chance you'll find something new when you'll watch it again. However, just in case, it's probably best to not put your hopes too high if there's a specific Pokemon you want to see and have its moment in the spotlight. Sure, many of the popular ones that are mostly from Gen 1, like Bulbasaur, Psyduck, Mr. Mime, and Mewtwo are prominently featured, on top of a few from the later generations like Snubbull, Aipom, Torterra, and Greninja, but the rest only have short cameos that appeared as much as they did during the trailers. But then you have the star Pokemon, the one who even gets the privilege to have his name in the title, Pikachu. As he is voiced by Ryan Reynolds, he is exactly what you'd expect him to be, Ryan Reynolds in a Pikachu body. And yet, he is the most enjoyable character and the best actor of the film. There is a good contrast of the snarky attitude with the adorable yellow body, and with Reynolds' signature Deadpool-like humor, he almost single-handedly gave the film some strong comedy.
So let me get this right. We're forced to listen to this spa music so your head doesn't explode and kill us all.
As a Pokemon movie, it really succeeded on the Pokemon aspect to really make it enjoyable for everyone. For major fans like myself, we will have a lot of fun checking out all the different scenes that would have every single little reference as much as we could find. Like, we're pretty much on a big Easter egg hunt. While the people who are less familiar with the franchise, they can still have fun with the moments that they will see things that even they can recognize. Like, they'll see some of the big scenes and they'll point out, oh look, that's a Charizard. Oh look, that's a Jigglypuff. Oh look, that's a Mewtwo. I recognize those Pokemon. But there is one big catch to this movie. No pun intended, of course. As a Pokemon movie, it certainly did the Pokemon aspect really well. But as a movie, when you look into the movie part, not so much. Of course, as this movie is called Detective Pikachu, the story has a mystery that the characters have to solve. The film is about a boy named Tim who discovered that his dad tragically died. But then when he found a Pikachu that somehow only he could understand him, who lost all of his memory, he finds out that the fate of his dad might not be what people told him. So with the help of some newfound friends, Tim and Pikachu are out to solve the case and find answers to what actually happened to his dad, get Pikachu's memory back, and figure out why can Pikachu only talk to Tim. In terms of story, unfortunately, it comes out a bit weak. Not necessarily the worst detective story in a movie, but it does end up becoming predictable at times and doesn't actually answer all the questions to what happened. I understand that it has to mostly stay true to the game that it's based on in terms of the narrative, but it doesn't change that when some of the answers get revealed, it can make the movie feel absolutely ridiculous, even by Pokemon standards.
He's barely moving.
Don't tell him that. Oh, he's on a bike. Quick, get in front of him.
Stop.
Oh, no. He's going down hard, Tim. Should have worn a helmet.
Another element that can take away some of the quality of this film is the human characters. As fun as the Pokemon can be, the people and the trainers are not. They feel like a bunch of dull tropes with little substance to deliver onto the feature. Even the dynamic between Tim and Lucy end up feeling generic and kind of makes them look dumb. Like they are not prepared to do these investigations. Some could say that the relationship between the two is meant to be a bit of a throwback to the anime with Ash and his friends, but in a movie setting like this, they end up feeling more annoying than relatable. That, and even some of the acting isn't strong enough to help improve the characters. Well, not all of them, of course. Some do a good job on their own, like Bill Nighy and Justice Smith. It's more the writing than anything that makes the human characters feel bad.
You can hear him, right?
Pika Pika! Yeah, Pika Pika Pika, he's adorable.
You're adorable. They can't understand me, kid.
Can no one else hear him?
Then again, Pokemon is never really known for having the most compelling stories or the most complex characters that can bring out the best of actors. What is actually very interesting to note about this movie is that early reactions stated that there will be some people who will really enjoy it regardless of how they feel about Pokemon. That this is a movie that both fans and non-fans can actually go and enjoy. Now, if I can be very honest, after watching it and thinking about the perspective of how a fan and a non-fan would feel when watching this movie, I might have to disagree on that a little, and I would say that, yes, it really does depend on how much you like Pokemon. Pokemon Detective Pikachu is an interesting case that somehow works and doesn't at the same time. As a movie, it fails to stand on its own with weak writing that gives out a predictable and sometimes ludicrous story with generic and unappealing characters. But as a Pokemon experience, it's great thanks to the amazing visual effects, the references sprinkled everywhere, the show-stealing Pokemon that give the scene some excitement, and the bonus of the performance and humor of Ryan Reynolds. For my recommendation, the main reason to why anyone would want to see this is because of the Pokemon coming to life. So it does depend on how you feel about the franchise. If you don't care about it at all or not even like Pokemon, then you're not going to get much out of it and might come out giving it at most a 6 or a 5 out of 10. But if you're a Pokemon fan like me or just want to see some live-action Pokemon, then you will get some enjoyment out of this, and that's why for my rating, I give this a 7 out of 10. Not a great movie, but I do count this as a fun watch. Probably the best thing that I could say about this movie is that this is a good start. If studios are interested to go and make more Pokemon movies that are in live action in the future, then this one would show that there definitely is an interest and that it is indeed possible. The public has widely approved of the way that they brought Pokemon into live action anyways, so at least that is something. It did deliver them the tools in order to go and actually craft a great Pokemon movie. Now, like I said before, in terms of the Pokemon aspect, they delivered it well. They actually succeeded on that. All it needs is actually a good movie to come with it. If they can actually go and get a great script and the right people to bring this all together, then I am confident that Pokemon will be able to make a huge impact in the movie industry as much as they did in gaming. Now, is this one in particular as good or like would actually be considered the best of the best in terms of video game movies or even Pokemon movies in general? Most likely not, but again, this is a great step in the right direction. You know, it's been a while since there's been anything new that came out for me to review. I wonder... Oh wait! There was that new Sonic movie, of course! But, oh wait, no, that's not usually the kind of thing I would review. But then again... you know what, screw it. I'm gonna go and ask people. I'll leave them to decide. There we go. Now, we wait. Will they even want to know my thoughts on the movie? Probably not. This is probably just a dumb idea to begin with. Okay, you asked for it! Now, before I get into the movie, I just would like to make one big clarification that, at the most, I'd call myself a casual Sonic fan. As a kid, I made myself familiar with the franchise through TV shows like Sonic Underground and Sonic X, and I've played some of the classic games on Sega Genesis whenever I would visit my cousins. The one Sonic game I've played the most in my life so far was Sonic Adventure 2 Battle on GameCube. And when looking back, it's definitely a fun game to play with a really awesome soundtrack. But everything else is honestly laughably bad. Seriously, some of the cutscenes feel like a setup for an X-rated parody.
What was that all about? And look what you did to my emerald!
I did that to prevent the Master Emerald from being stolen, you idiot.
Besides, there's an echidna effect you should know that shows you how I am one with the Master Emerald. However, in recent years, I'm not as invested in the franchise as before. Except for voicing Sonic for an abridged series, and that was pretty fun to be the blue blur for once.
Okay, I'm Chris.
I'm Sonic. Sonic the Hedgehog.
Hi, Sonic. I'm Chris.
This is gonna be a long series.
As for the games, I don't really bother much with any of the new ones, with the exception of Sonic Mania. Let's just say that the standards of the Genesis games have been long gone. But then again, they do make great Game Grumps episodes.
Fuck! Fuck this stupid ass! Eat it, you piece of shit! Fucking eat it! What are you doing? What happened? And he's gonna do the chin move! Unavoidable chin move!
Sonic, in your face!
Whoa, whoa, whoa!
One of the most common reasons why people told me that I should review the Sonic movie is because I've already previously done a review on Pokemon Detective Pikachu. So, logically, it should make sense that I should also make a review for Sonic the Hedgehog, right? Well, technically yes, but here's the thing. I made a special exception for Pokemon Detective Pikachu because I am a major Pokemon fan. It's one of my favorite video game franchises, and even as I'm recording this right now, I am still spending countless of hours on Pokemon Sword and Shield. Sonic the Hedgehog, on the other hand, yeah, I like it, but I wouldn't necessarily say it's one of my faves. But, with all that said, this is all meant to say that this will be all from the perspective of a casual fan. This review is from a casual fan's point of view. Just thought I would go and make that clear. Alright, but now, with all that said, I will admit that it is a nice looking movie. One of the first things that people will talk about regarding this movie is how the visuals look. Especially when Sonic's original design from the first trailer made people go, And, to the movie's credit, the updated design was very well needed, and the film took full advantage of it. While Sonic got some changes in his looks to blend in with his real environment, like a lot more textures and a more reasonable anatomy, his overall design still stays true to the original look, resulting in that right blend of the game's cartoony style, but adapted to fit in a live-action world. And with this more appealing looking Sonic, it also helps the movie to make some of the other elements enjoyable, most namely, the action scenes. There's no surprise that this feature contains a lot of action, like fighting off Robotnik and some chase scenes, but what makes them stand out is how they all play with Sonic's speed. While most of the time his abilities are used for comedy purposes, it's when they are presented in the more intense moments that bring the spirit of the classic games to life, prominently using his signature moves for that sense of reality that helps the movie feel engaging.
Here comes the boom!
How are you not dead?
I have no idea!
But Sonic cannot take all the credit for making his own movie fun, because if there is one person that is able to outshine the Blue Hedgehog, it's undeniably Dr. Robotnik, played by Jim Carrey. Imagine all the years he must have bottled up his comedic side during his recent pursuit for more serious and dramatic roles. In this film, Carrey lets it all out to deliver a performance that's so over the top to the point that it even rivals his acting in Ace Ventura and The Mask. Maybe some will be put off by it and find him overbearing, but for the most part, he brought what people love the most about his comedies, and he looks like he's having the time of his life with it. Considering he is an egotistical mad doctor, he fits the role well and immediately becomes the show stealer the second he's on the screen. Not to mention that the CGI around him is also great, from his high-tech lab to all the creative robots and machines he deploys in order to take down Sonic. Just like the Blue Blur's design, Robotnik is a great highlight of this movie, and I'd even say that the best jokes all come from him.
I was not expecting that. But I was expecting not to expect something, so it doesn't count.
As a Sonic movie, it does deliver on what people want to see the most.
It's Sonic going fast and using his abilities to take down Dr. Robotnik, along with the added bonus of Jim Carrey's signature goofball comedy, all presented with some well-crafted and great-looking CGI. The Sonic movie definitely does deliver on the Sonic. Too bad that it doesn't deliver much on the movie, though.
As fun as the Sonic elements can be, when discussing about how this is as a movie, that's when the high speeds aren't as fast or exciting as they seem. When you take away the Sonic the Hedgehog theming, you end up with just another generic supernatural buddy movie where this average straight man teams up with the non-human star of the feature in order to achieve the latter's goal while they both form a friendship. And considering how they got James Marsden pairing up with Sonic, it's hard to not make the comparisons with Illumination's Hop, where he's virtually playing the same role. It results in the story to feel completely unoriginal, predictable from top to bottom, where it's almost as if the script was recycled and slightly updated to include Sonic. The only thing I can think of that was unexpected is when the film starts by introducing Sonic's mother as a giant owl. Speaking of which, that's another thing that can have issues. Yes, it's cool to see Sonic in his own major motion picture going as fast as the speed of sound. But eventually, the novelty wears off pretty quick because the references to the games are mostly limited to just the two leads. To have a better understanding of what I mean, take a look at Pokemon Detective Pikachu. What made the novelty of being a video game-based movie stronger there is that the film doesn't just have a couple of characters, but rather an entire world to play around with, keeping the wonder alive with every scene and every new Pokemon they continuously introduce. While this one may be limited to what they could use from the first game, all it really has is Sonic and Dr. Robotnik. And you can only do so much with them until you get used to seeing them doing the same things with Sonic running fast and Robotnik deploying his robots.
You're right. It was lame. Gift shop was cool, though.
And then there is the humor outside of Jim Carrey. While I wouldn't say that all the jokes fall flat, they are relatively mixed. There are moments that can be genuinely funny, but they can also be unpleasant duds, especially when the tone feels like it's trying to continuously catch up with Carrey's style of humor, but can never reach it. It's also problematic when the film wants to focus more on the comedy more so than developing its characters, or at least make them more interesting than the same tiresome tropes done many times before with James Marsden as the human average Joe slowly bonding with the star, while Sonic is the smart aleck lead looking for a friend that often spews out pop culture references, including doing the floss a couple of times. At least I can say that the acting isn't terrible. On average, the actors performed decently where they did their job, but nothing extraordinary or memorable like Jim Carrey. I'd even say that's how things mostly are with this movie. I won't go as far and say that some things are awful here, but very little surpasses being just okay at best.
In a way, it's a simple movie with a simple mission. It's not trying to be anything big like being a major motion picture event or a cinematic masterpiece. Nah, forget all that. It just wants to go and take the first Sonic the Hedgehog game and turn that into a movie. If that's what you want, then that's what you get. Simple as that. Just don't expect anything more out of it.
Sonic the Hedgehog is one of the most definitive examples of a popcorn flick. A movie that's only powered by its own novelty in order to deliver a feature-length worth of decent entertainment. While not cinematically admirable with its weak script, okay acting, and hit-and-miss comedy, there is enough to give audiences a good time with its strong visuals, engaging action, and Jim Carrey at his lovably craziest. While it's not a high priority to see it, my recommendation depends on how much the concept of a Sonic the Hedgehog movie appeals to you. If you love the idea, then it could be worth a watch. If it doesn't really grab you, then you won't be missing much. As for my rating, it did entertain me enough, so I'm just giving this a 6 out of 10. It's average, but as video game-based movies go, it could have been worse, so at least it did its job well enough.
And that's all I could really say about this movie, really. It did its job well enough. It didn't necessarily do anything drastic on me, like change my whole perspective of the franchise or make me want to go and play more of the Sonic games or anything like that. All it did is just give me the basics of an entertaining movie, along with selling its novelty. It gave me Sonic the Hedgehog in a movie, it gave me some good laughs with Jim Carrey's antics, and it gave me some cool action with some nice looking CGI. Yeah, sure, it barely gave me anything else, but I guess I can't really ask for anything more. It promised me a Sonic movie, and I got a Sonic movie. At least I got something out of it.
Who would have guessed that Sonic the Hedgehog would eventually become a cinematic sensation? Of course, everyone knows him as the poster boy of Sega and was once Mario's biggest rival, but his jump to the big screen was undeniably an adventure equally as memorable as some of his best games. At first, he did scare the public with a possible, realistic look.
Meow?
But unlike many other feature films, the Blue Blur did not want to disappoint. And at the cost of a slight delay of its release so that he could get a new look, the movie became the final theatrical hit before the pandemic took over, and became part of a new era of movies based on video games that might actually be worth watching.
Oh, crap!
More or less. I remember back in early 2020 when I got the chance to check this movie out and see if I can enjoy this as much as I did with some of the games. And I must say, it was alright. I mean, there are stuff that I thought was really good, like the CG and Sonic's look is fantastic, the action scenes are amazing, and Jim Carrey going back to doing what he does best is always a blast to watch.
I look at you, evil grows in me.
Maybe it's because I've seen so many of these kinds of movies, but it's hard for me to not look past the recycled tropes and the tiresome plotline that ultimately makes this a rather generic family flick about an average guy who teams up with a title supernatural creature and forms a bond with it while also gets tangled up in his mess with humor that is usually a hit and miss. It doesn't help either that with James Marsden as the human lead, this is like if you take Hop but switch the Easter Bunny with Sonic.
Okay, let's drop this increasingly humiliating topic of conversation. Bucket list, give it to me!
I'm not calling this a bad movie at all. In fact, I actually do understand why it does have the fan base that it is today. Especially with the fact that, well, this is a film adaptation of Sonic the Hedgehog. It's just that I personally find that while it is entertaining, it's just not really a great movie. I think in my review of the first film, I gave it like a 6 out of 10, you know? It was just passable. In fact, I'll just say this, like, get that out of the way, that my hot take with Sonic the Hedgehog is that I personally prefer Detective Pikachu over Sonic because at least with Detective Pikachu, that is able to stand out more with the way that it nails its world building with how they brought the world of Pokemon to life. But either way, it doesn't really matter what I personally think about Sonic the Hedgehog or anything like that, considering that the first movie, well, it turned out to be a big hit. So, of course they would go and make a sequel. I'm not gonna lie, even if I didn't view the first film highly, I was pretty hyped for the sequel, because it looked like they were going to emphasize more of what made its predecessor really enjoyable. More time with Sonic, more time with the lore of the games, now with the Master Emerald in play, more time with Jim Carrey's chaotic acting, and more action-packed moments for Sonic to run at ridiculous speeds. And just like the games, the sequel characters are making their big screen debut to add some extra spice to the picture, such as Tails, and the one with the Master Emerald himself,
Sonic, meet Knuckles.
If there is one thing that people really do appreciate from the original, it's how it is able to listen to its audience in order to deliver the best experience that it could offer. In fact, one reason why it became so successful in the first place is because of the redesign, where they changed up Sonic's look to become a bit more familiar and look a lot more likable, compared to last time where he looked like... Who knows? Maybe they'll do the same thing here where they will go and take note of the criticisms from the first film and they will go and improve upon that in order to make the sequel possibly better than the original. And if this is something that the filmmakers have actually done with Sonic the Hedgehog 2, then I must say that we're probably going to be in for something really special here.
The best way to summarize the picture is that this is a treasure hunt movie. Sonic teams up with Tails, who just teleported to Earth, in order to find the Master Emerald before it gets in the hands of Dr. Robotnik and his new partner, Knuckles. Sounds like a pretty simple storyline, but that's because that's the most that this movie offers in terms of a story. Don't come in expecting this to be a straightforward movie because whatever narrative it holds is almost non-existent. Yes, there technically is a plot with a mission and a conflict, but this film kinda just gives up on trying to tell a story and shows a series of crazy events that ultimately lead to the big battle at the end. In fact, a good amount of the moments in the film just spontaneously happen with little to no explanation. Almost like the movie was making things up on the spot in order to find new obstacles for Sonic and Tails to get themselves in. As much as I would like to provide some examples, a lot of these would most likely be spoilers, and even if I do explain them, they're the kind that you would not expect to happen in this film, let alone from something out of Sonic. In fact, it's pretty rare for the movie to take a minute to give any context to what's going on, and that's usually reserved for the essential elements that relate to the goal of getting the Master Emerald or the CG characters. The rest is just a bunch of cliched moments that just tell its audience to just roll with it, regardless if it's even necessary to include to the picture. And because of that attitude throughout the entire film, it honestly makes it one of the stupidest features in recent years. And you know what? That is the key to what makes this movie great. I know you're probably shocked when I said that it's stupid, but it knows very well that it's stupid and chooses to fully embrace it. It's almost like it's aware that it doesn't have the talent to tell a solid 2-hour story. So instead of trying like before, where it results in feeling a bit generically forgettable, it throws any structure out the window just to prioritize having fun. Let's be honest, a movie based on a video game about a blue hedgehog that runs very fast and a flying fox with 2 tails who destroy robots is a ridiculous idea. As much as I may get backlash over saying this, Sonic is not a franchise that should be taken too seriously. The whole purpose for the franchise, whether it be from the games or from the movies, is about whatever people consume from it, they are having fun. And the sequel captures that beautifully. It's like if it's channeling Jim Carrey's manic energy and uses that to set the mood, which is how the tone is also what makes this very engaging. It's aware that the scenes are already absurd as is, but instead of trying to make sense of them for the sake of the plot, they double down to find what else they can do in order to get even more ridiculous so that the audience can enjoy the moment. And never once does the mood feel corporately manufactured where they have to include branding for something like Olive Garden. Even if there are cliches or dumb moments that would normally be irritating and set back any other movie, the tone makes it excusable and even turns that into a positive. With this kind of writing, it's kind of expected that they would have these tropes, so the execution makes the most out of them and fill them with some of the cheesiest humor to the point where they're turning the movie into the 1993 cartoon series. If you don't want to be a proper movie, then at least make what you're offering enjoyable, and that is exactly what it managed to accomplish.
You're no match for me. I've been training for this my entire life.
And I have no training at all, yet here I am ahead of you. That's gotta be embarrassing.
I will say that my one criticism with this is that it does happen when the running time does take a bit of a toll, since this is technically over 2 hours long. As fun as these scenes can be, there are times when the continuous wacky nature and weird surprises can feel a little exhausting. I'm not saying that it can feel like an eternity. It probably would have been solved if it just cut off 20 or even just 10 minutes, but there was a part of me that did get excited for the credits to roll just so that I can have a moment to breathe. It comes to a certain point where there's just so much energy I could take.
Now, I just want to clarify right now that this does not mean that I think this is a so bad it's good movie. I mean, sure, there are ways that you can enjoy this in the same style that you would with a so bad it's good movie. And yeah, I do have some problems with it. Like, I do think that, well, the script is not really all that great, but that doesn't mean that I think this movie is bad in any way, shape, or form. Far from that, actually. Now, you remember what I said before in regards to possibly taking notes about the problems with the first movie so that they could go and improve upon that here? Well, it really does feel that way with Sonic the Hedgehog 2, where they listened to what is it that they liked and disliked about the first, and they certainly gave less about what people didn't like from before, and they gave us so much more of what made the first movie really enjoyable.
As nonsensical as this can be, the one thing that it stays consistent is how it does try to care about the world building, clarifying the importance of the Master Emerald, its history, and what are Tails and Knuckles' connection to all of what is happening. While there is a clear link between the games and this, the lore is loosely based so that there is also a connection between this and its predecessor. Funny enough, I feel like the more it separates itself from the real world, the better and more immersive it is, because it allows the feature to really play with its creativity and doesn't need to rely on that crutch of the having the supernatural creature be on Earth trope. It gives the team and the audience time to indulge on the fantastical elements so that we can learn more about Sonic and where he's from. It's a lot more interesting for us to experience his world than it is to see Sonic experience ours. Also, it goes without saying that the visual effects are absolutely stunning. Considering that this requires more than just Sonic, Eggman's robots, and the other typical CG setups like the real-world backgrounds, the team really outdid themselves to play a lot with the characters and their unique abilities. Not to mention how some of the environments, especially the temple that holds the Master Emerald, is beautifully detailed, where some actually do combine the look of a real ancient ruin and something that came from a Sonic game. But the true crowning achievement of the movie and its visuals is the action scenes. All jam-packed with many amazing and intense moments that can easily get its viewers on the edge of their seats. Rather it be the fights with Sonic and Knuckles, the chases to escape Eggman's wrath, or that major climax, it knows how to keep the pace high in order to have the experience be exciting, especially with its unpredictable nature, where you never know what the characters will do in the next epic moment. But if I do have to point to one significant reason for its crazy tone to work so well, it's because it's noticeable that the actors are having a lot of fun. Yes, I'm sure a lot will talk about how Jim Carrey is back doing his signature chaotic acting, and it does add to the fun. But like I said, the whole feeling of the movie channels his acting. So I'd argue that there can be some moments that can even overshadow his performance. But still, if you want to see Jim going crazy, this will satisfy your needs. But the true standout stars of the film are the voices of the otherworldly characters, including Ben Schwartz as Sonic, Idris Elba as Knuckles, and Colleen O'Shaughnessy maintaining her position as the current true voice of Tails. They all do a great job to emphasize their personalities, like Sonic being the charismatic wisecracker that wants to be a hero, Tails is the tech expert that is also a big fan of Sonic, and Knuckles is the more brawn than brain that is committed to finding the Master Emerald. As it is primarily about them, they carry the heart of the picture as much as the action. To stay with the cheesy mood, this does have the typical morals about when it's the right time to be a hero and how it's best to work as a team instead of being alone. But the relationship that the characters have with each other does work, where the actors' performances do help to solidify its emotional core.
Trust me, there will come a moment when your powers will be needed. But you don't choose that moment. That moment chooses you.
I just got goosebumps.
I also want to add that some of the live actors also did pretty well. Of course, you got James Marsden being Sonic's straight man as Donut Lord, and Lee Majdoub having a crush on Robotnik as Agent Stone. But there are also a few pleasant surprises, like Tika Sumpter having more to work with as Maddie, and Natasha Rothwell as Rachel, who probably has some of the best non-Sonic moments. I won't say what they are, but let's say that she proves that the movie doesn't necessarily need CG to make things go wild.
This is such a weird case for a feature. I mean, I get it. I understand that this is technically not a great movie in the traditional sense. Some of the criticisms against it, I actually do understand. And I have mentioned some before, like, I do see how the script can be a little bit messy per se. However, I cannot deny that when I was watching it on the big screen, like when I went to theaters watching Sonic the Hedgehog 2, I had an absolute blast. I had a wonderful time watching it. So much so that I was able to go and look past some of the problematic elements and just indulge in whatever craziness it wants to go and offer me. And at that point, if that is able to give me a lot of entertainment and to come out with a smile at the end of all of it, then it must have done something right.
Sonic the Hedgehog 2 is one of the stupidest and craziest movies in recent years, and that's what makes it so much better than the first film. Yes, the story often makes no sense at all, and it's probably a little too long than it should be, but what makes this movie work is that you could tell that everyone making this had fun. The actors all had fun with their performances, the filmmakers all had fun when producing this, and the visual effects artists all had fun bringing this to life. And as a result, the audience has fun when watching it and doesn't have that sour sense of feeling manufactured to capitalize on the success of the first. And with the addition of factors that are well done, like solid acting, great looking visuals, and engaging action, they all result in a feature that defines a fun-filled experience. Regardless of what you think of Sonic, rather if you're a big fan of the games or not that familiar with him, this is worth checking out if you ever just need a good time. As for my rating, I honestly thought hard about it, but honestly, I'm giving this a 7.5 out of 10. Maybe not the best movie I've seen, but definitely one of the most enjoyable ones I've experienced.
I'm not gonna lie, trying to figure out the right rating that perfectly reflects my thoughts on the whole feature, it was seriously tough. Like, that was possibly the hardest part about making this entire review. Because for a while, I was actually contemplating either giving this a 7 out of 10 or an 8 out of 10. Because I keep on juggling on the different factors about how I feel about this movie. Rather it be about my thoughts on the film itself, like in terms of what I think of the quality of it, and also my experience when watching the film, because I could say right now, those two things are completely different, and I could actually give a different rating for each of those things. However, after some long and careful thought, I decided, you know what, instead of just 7 or just 8, why don't we just go and split it down the middle, because I feel like it actually feels right to go and say that this is a 3 stars out of 4 movie, you know? It feels right for me. I feel like that does reflect both how I feel when watching it and what I think of the movie itself. However, there is one thing that I do have to say. Like, even if this rating doesn't necessarily sound magnificent, or it doesn't necessarily sound like something I would say like, oh, at the end of the year I'll say that this is among my top 10 best or whatever, this whole experience of when I went to go and watch Sonic 2, it's probably the best that I've had in a long time. Like, this was honestly the most fun that I've had when watching a movie on the big screen in years. And I know there are probably some factors about it, like it's rare nowadays that I would go and watch a movie on the big screen for obvious reasons, but still, it doesn't change how I've had just an absolute blast watching it. And it's all because, well, Sonic the Hedgehog 2 wasn't trying to be a good movie. It was trying to have a lot of fun. And because it succeeded in having a lot of fun, that's what makes Sonic the Hedgehog 2 a good movie.
All right. Let's go.
The Super Mario Bros. Movie. This is it. After several Nintendo Directs over the years to build up the hype of the gaming company's biggest move to the big screen yet, the most anticipated animated movie in recent years is out of the pipe and has entered our kingdom. It's funny to look back at how the cartoon community was obsessed with hating Illumination Entertainment for making films that play it safe, yet were still able to become some of the most successful modern features because now they're taking one of the biggest risks that a movie has ever taken. Seriously, what could be riskier than making a mainstream big-budgeted movie based on the most iconic video game IP? I mean, Hollywood tried to do that once in the 1990s.
Monkey!
And that did not go well. Mario is so recognizable that almost everyone in the world at this point played at least one of his games in their lifetime. Not to mention that the plumber is credited for turning many people into gamers who grew up with his adventures to fight off Bowser and still continue to do so to this day. As for me, I admit that I am one of those lifelong Mario fans. Some of the most enjoyable memories in my life are from when I was playing a Mario game. From the classics like Super Mario 64, to the party games with friends like Mario Kart and Mario Party, to the modern hits like Super Mario Odyssey. I'd even go as far and say that Mario can be found a few times amongst my personal favorite video games. So, as you can imagine, I am absolutely excited for this feature. So much so that a friend of mine gifted me the teaser poster and I went to get that thing framed to show it off, and I can't help but have my expectations high on this one to see if it will be as fun as the games they're based on. So now that we've taken the warp pipe to the Mushroom Kingdom, will this movie be as exhilarating as grabbing a star? Or is that good movie we're looking for in another castle? Let's find out. The story. One thing to note about the Mario games is that they are not often known for their storytelling. In terms of plot, they're usually just about a plumber saving a princess from an evil turtle monster with no sense or logic to be found or care about. You play the games because the games themselves are fun. Thus, the story is meaningless when the gameplay makes up for the other elements that it lacks. But when you try to translate that onto a storytelling medium like a movie where the narrative is an essential component, that leaves little to no room for getting away with that kind of neglect, and the errors are left awkwardly exposed. I'm sorry to say this, but the biggest problem with the Super Mario movie that I'll say now is that the writing, in the traditional filmmaking sense, is not good. Even to the point that it makes the film feel bland when you look past the Mario theme. It's obvious that the plot is a low priority for this feature, and the film more often than not feels like it can forget about it. With the simple narrative of trying to stop Bowser from destroying the Mushroom Kingdom, the characters barely have any time to present themselves more than just having their one personality trait. The side plot regarding Luigi being held hostage provides almost nothing to the feature, and it feels so rushed because all it wants to do is just jump to the next action scene. In fact, it rushes so much that it doesn't have time to question anything. Everyone seems to unnaturally roll with whatever's going on and let things happen, giving the film a weird act before you think attitude.
Do not touch that mushroom, you'll die! Oh, I'm sorry. That one's perfectly fine. Come on, Mario!
I get that it's focusing more on adapting the games into a feature film, but there are some ideas that it presents that could have helped strengthen the feature with some substance, but never once did it commit to take advantage of that opportunity. One example is the relationship between Mario and Luigi. The movie would have greatly benefited from having a Frozen-like heart to highlight the bond between the siblings so that the audiences could emotionally connect with them and give each other a strong purpose to get out of their situations to have their reunion be all the more rewarding. And yet, the movie doesn't have time to develop an emotional core because it's so preoccupied with stuffing the feature with as much references to the games as possible. In a way, the movie focuses more on the novelty instead of its own quality. Then again, I will give the picture that there are some things that the references do enhance to make the experience more enjoyable, especially for Mario fans. One of them is the world building to not only present these elements in their new feature habitat, but also to provide an explanation to their origins, where they come from, and how they're used.
Here we go!
Another good use for them is to provide the materials for the action scenes. Every piece in the picture comes from the games, and the team took advantage of every moment to show how they work so that the action can capture that signature sense of fun of avoiding the creative dangers that only Mario knows how to do best. On a side note, I like to add that the references work beautifully with the score by Brian Tyler, who collaborated with Koji Kondo in order to include as many of the recognizable music from the games as possible that really adds to the sense of this being a Mario tribute. I'd even say that the music is among the best parts of the film. I can guarantee that there are ways that people can get engaged with this picture, and there are a few things that do work in their own right. Just like Mario's adventures in the consoles, the story is not the highlight, and while he could get away with it in the games, there's no power-up strong enough for him to get around that in his movie. The animation. Okay, Mario fans, I know you may not be happy with me blowing this movie up like King Babam for the story, but I do have some positive things to say about this too. Actually, there are elements that I do love in this picture, and the animation is one of them. More than anything else, the animation is what proves that this movie was crafted not by artists and filmmakers, but by Mario fans who want to create the biggest homage to their love for the games. Just by the sheer size of the world that Mario and Luigi found themselves in, the team at Illumination gave it their all to deliver a great combination of something fresh and familiar. Yes, the characters and everything around them have a distinct difference to how they look in the games, but the changes are not too drastic where their recognizable characteristics are still intact. In a way, the biggest change they got is the added movie-like detail that gives the feature more texture and depth that actually suits them well. And yet, everything else still maintains what makes the game so aesthetically pleasing to look at, including the use of vibrant colors to paint the picture with a strong use of primary ones that can make each toad and pipe stand out, and the designs kept their enjoyable cartoonish style that fits perfectly in an animated film.
My army! Koopas! Goombas! Whatever those things are!
Aww. Also, as I said before, the way that they use the elements from the games works great in the picture. Mario fans will have a blast looking everywhere for all the items, creatures, and locations that they can recognize, which results in part of the fun to spot all the Easter eggs that the team hid everywhere. Not to mention that they are a great help in the world building to feel like the Mushroom Kingdom and all of its surroundings are coming to life. Even in the brothers' home of Brooklyn, there are more references to find that go beyond the franchise and pay tribute to other Nintendo games. Another element that the animators should be praised for is the action scenes. I've already mentioned how they got that Mario spirit with how they use the components from the games, but even by looking at them as they are undeniably the highlights of the feature. They have a great fast pace that makes the moments engaging and can quickly grab audiences' attention. It takes advantage of the movie's scale to capture how big the situation is, and the references add so much creativity and fun to show how those parts of the games that people know are adapted to the big screen. As much as this may have its problems, it's the animation and the creative team at Illumination who help make the feature be worthwhile to watch. It's colorful, it's very respectful to the source material, it's action-packed, and it makes the movie amazing. At least to look at. The characters. Almost everyone knows who these characters are. They're icons in their own right. But do you know these characters in terms of their personality or how they are emotionally? If you ever want to figure that out, then this movie will give you a bit of that, but not much. I'll say now that there isn't a character here that they made completely unbearable, but with its neglectful attitude towards the storytelling, the characters don't get a chance to present their development in their new movie form, leaving the actors to do most of the heavy lifting so that they can have at least some charisma. Let's begin with the legend himself, Mario, who in this movie wants to follow his dreams and prove to himself that he is more than a nobody. Amongst everything in this picture, the one that received the most hate since it was first announced was the casting of Chris Pratt as the renowned plumber. And I'll admit that I was not a fan of that choice either. But now that I got to see his interpretation of the character, I can honestly say that, yeah, I still don't think it was a good idea. Don't get me wrong, Pratt is a really good actor, and I'll give him that he did well in his performance here. But my problem is that he doesn't convincingly sound like Mario. You see, in terms of his voice, Pratt is not a versatile actor like Bill Hader or Keegan-Michael Key. He has that one distinct voice that is easily recognizable and suits well as the average white American man. That's why he was a perfect fit for the role of Emmett in the Lego Movie, because he knows how to perform with that average tone. I'm not asking him to have some crazy Italian accent. In fact, the movie does address that in a clever way. But with how this movie built its protagonist and with Chris Pratt's acting, it's hard for me to be convinced that this is Mario. All I can think of is that I'm watching Emmett 2.0.
Oh, I got this. No problem.
Then you have Luigi, who is the supportive but nervous brother that gets kidnapped by Bowser. Again, he had a chance to provide some heart for the film by showing his love for his family, but the movie rarely gave him any opportunities for that, and his role was reduced to
Mario, wherever you are! Help!
Then there's Princess Peach, who the feature decided to take a different direction than the typical damsel in distress. Unlike most of the games, they gave her the kind of strength that makes violent incels feel insecure about themselves.
Apparently they make, because they have to, Princess Peach the hero of the film. You knew that was coming. They couldn't just allow it to be what the actual video game is, where Princess Peach is the thing that you're saving, right? Now Princess Peach has to be the kick-ass woman.
Don't worry, Ben. One day you'll go to therapy to properly manage your feelings. But I gotta say that this new Peach actually works great. The film uses her royalty role to show her as a responsible leader, someone with the intellect of the ins and outs of her world, and was physically trained to protect her people. So instead of being Mario's prize for the rescue mission, she becomes Mario's mentor and leave the kidnap role to Luigi, who makes perfect sense to be in that position. Then there's Toad, who is the typical loyal sidekick that quickly buddies up with Mario. Donkey Kong, who is the prideful son of the Mad King Cranky Kong and becomes Mario's rival, to which Seth Rogen's voice surprisingly works well with him. And then there is Bowser. He encompasses every stereotype you'd expect from a family-friendly bad guy. A ruthless tyrant who wants to take over the world and has a major crush on Peach to the point of pursuing to marrying her. Thanks to the wild performance of Jack Black, Bowser is one of the best characters of the film because of how much fun he had in his role. He provides this great energy where he loves every minute of being evil, as well as how he presents himself as an intimidating threat to the Mushroom Kingdom.
I finally found it. Now who's gonna stop me?
Of course, there are other characters that are featured as well, but many of them are just minor roles that don't provide much to the story. However, to their credit, some of their inclusion is very welcome for providing some great comedy onto the picture. Especially that psychotic Luma Lee.
He is cute, but he is.
There's gotta be a way out of here.
There's no escape. The only hope is the sweet relief of death.
Maybe they're not the best versions of the characters, and I'm sure some of the casting is debatable, but thanks to some good voices, the cast do play a significant part in the feature's enjoyment. Is this the greatest movie that is worth all those years of hype and anticipation? Honestly, no. Is it still a fun adventure to see the beloved games adapted to the big screen? Oh, absolutely! The Super Mario Bros. Movie is one of the most definitive examples of a crowd pleaser who aims to give what audiences want to see, then to satisfy the critics. As a film on its own, it can be quite flawed due to the weak writing that supplies a clumsily rushed story and little to no character development, but it is able to satisfy viewers by doing other things very well, like the amazing animation, engaging action, enjoyable voice acting, a fantastic score, and how it is all crafted as one of the biggest love letters to gaming's most beloved franchise. During its opening week, I actually went to watch it twice with two different perspectives. The first time was on my own as a critic, and I came out thinking that the movie was just okay at best. But then when I went the second time with friends as a casual moviegoer, I had a great time and was enjoying it much more than before. Much like Illumination's other films, this film is not meant to be analyzed or be thought-provoking or to expect something revolutionary out of it. This is meant to be watched to have fun, and as long as you go to primarily see the Super Mario World come to life in movie form, then I can assure you that you will have a great time. And on that note, if you had a great time with this review, then give this a like and subscribe to my channel. Like Mario, I got plenty of content that will give you hours of enjoyment. And you know what? After all this talk about Mario, why don't we cap this off with something a little more special?